Hello everyone. We're going to do a little activity today where we try to decide if something is alive or not based on those 5 criteria that we've been talking about. So it needs to be able to eat and breathe. It needs to have cells. It needs to be able to grow. It needs to be able to reproduce. And it needs to be able to react to things in its environment. So I have 2 bags here that have very similar things inside. And we are going to figure out if what's in there is alive or not. Okay? So, if it's alive, then it needs to have air if it's going to breathe. It needs to have some food. It needs to, what else was I thinking of? It needs to have air, it needs to have food, it needs to react, so we may see some reactions happening. If it's alive, if it's reacting to the food, if it's eating the food, then it's reacting. We would have to have a microscope to look at it to see if it's a cell, so we're not going to be able to prove that. And we'll see if there's more of them when we're done. I don't know if we'll be able to see that or not either. So here we go. Let me show you what we're going to do. Here's some of the supplies that we're going to use today. We've got our 2 bags with our mystery things inside. They look pretty similar. We have some sugar because if it's alive, it's probably going to want to eat sugar, right? Who doesn't want to eat sugar? Then a lot of things need water as well. So I have a cup of water, and we're going to add some sugar and some water to our bags. This is a 1 tablespoon measuring cup or measuring spoon. So I'm going to get a tablespoon of sugar and put it in this bag, and a tablespoon of sugar and put it in this bag. Then, so we don't confuse our bags, I'm just going to label them. This is going to be bag 1, and this is going to be bag 2. So now we have food in there. Now let's put some water in there. I'm just going to pour, this is warm water. Pour some warm water in bag 1, and then I want to leave a little bit of the air in there, because if it's alive, it's going to need some air to breathe. And we'll mix it all up and let that sit. Then we're going to pour some water in here in bag number 2. Remember, we want to leave a little bit of air in there. There, we got air in there. We'll mix it all up. Whoops, sorry, there you go. Mix it all up. Now we're going to let those 2 bags sit for a few minutes. We're going to come back in 5 minutes and see if they've done anything. Okay, it's been 5 minutes. Let's look at our bags. Bag number 1 looks just about the same. There's water in it, there's our powder mixed in, but I haven't seen a big change. Let's look at bag number 2. It's a little bit foggy because the water was warm, but can you see all those bubbles in there? And can you see how it looks a lot bigger than it was before? It's kind of swelling up in there. So bag number 2 looks like it ate some of our food and it reacted to the food. It also is creating, you notice the bag is puffier now than it was before. We left a little bit of air in there before. Look at bag 1. See how much air we had left in there? Not very much. But bag 2, we've got a lot more air in there. So it's actually creating more of a gas in here. It's creating something called CO2. So we know it's eating and breathing. We know it's reacting to the food and the water that we put in there. We know that we can't really tell if it's growing, if we have more in there, or if it's just making bubbles, but it could be that it's growing. And because we don't have a microscope, we can't really see if it's cells or not, but I am going to say that bag number 2 was alive, where bag number 1 was not alive. And then I'll tell you what's in the 2 bags. So if you would like to do this at home, I'll tell you what we've got in our bags. Now we decided that bag number 1 was probably not alive. It didn't really react, and bag number 2 definitely did react, and we're gonna say that it was alive. Bag number 1 is cornmeal. Sometimes you can make cornbread out of this, but it doesn't really, it's just pieces of corn that have been chopped up, and then we use it to cook with. So was it once alive? Yeah, it was, because it was part of a corn plant, but it is not alive anymore. Bag number 2 was yeast. We had yeast in there, and we use yeast to make bread. And bag number 2, the yeast is alive. It's these little tiny cells that when they get something to eat and some warm water, they'll wake up. It's kind of like they've been sleeping, and then they start to eat that sugar, and they make all these bubbles. It's carbon dioxide, and that's what makes your bread rise when you use yeast. So yeast is alive. Now when you bake it, you would kill the yeast, so you're not eating little living things, but until you bake it, it's still alive, and that's what makes your bread rise. So yeast is a living thing, and we know that because it grows, it needs air and food, so it eats and breathes. It reproduces, it makes some more yeast particles, and it reacts to its environment. Okay, so we found 2 things. We decided one was living and one was not. All right, you guys, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.